Good morning, I'm Kristen Folletti and welcome to News Desk on SiliconANGLE TV for Wednesday, March 20th, 2013. Blackberry 10's OS fails to get government approval, and Microsoft attempts to lure in app developers with handfuls of cash. Join us now to provide his breaking analysis on these mobile headlines is SiliconANGLE contributing editor John Casaretto. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
The UK's Communications Electronic Security Group has rejected the BlackBerry's new BB10 software as not secure enough for essential government work. So, John, to start, how does a government determine whether a software is secure or not? Is it difficult for smartphone software to get approval?
Yeah, this is definitely a big blow. And, in this situation, this was the UK's CESG group, which is their Communication Electronic Security Group that did this classification. They classified it as restricted, which is 2 levels below secret. Here in the U.S., at least as far as the DoD goes, they've traditionally had this process known as the STIG process, which ensures the security of these systems as they're deployed and things like that. But lately they've started to gravitate to a different system that sets some high-level requirements across a number of areas, and then the vendors tell the DoD exactly how they're meeting those security requirements. The bottom line is, across the board, that a lot of these institutions have got some pretty stringent requirements when it comes to the government and whether these operating systems will work in these environments or not. And that's really based on, do these things, these softwares, do they do what they say they're going to do, and do they do so securely?
So why didn't the BB10 software pass the British government security requirements?
This is a pretty sore point here on this one. The balance software, which is the software that's designed to separate the work environment and the personal environment on these phones, which is one of the biggest selling features of the new BlackBerry 10 software. It's supposed to do a bunch of things. It definitely separate the two, prevent copying of data between these things, and some of the results that they found shown that they weren't real specific about this thus far. We haven't found it. But it failed some of those security requirements and apparently failed some of that functionality. It would be the takeaway from it.
After a year of devastating losses, the Z10 and its upcoming keyboard-based version, the Q10, are high-priced BlackBerry devices that have been aimed at winning back corporate customers who have migrated to Apple or Android devices. How big of a blow is this for BlackBerry to be shunned by an entire government, John?
Yeah, this is a very big blow, and it dashes some very lofty hopes for the platform. This was a part of the government, the corporate audience, or the brands that they were trying to and helping to build on, and really their moneymaker. And I think that BlackBerry's got a lot to do to try to make sure, or hopefully make up for this in order for their ambitions and for growth and so on would continue, because this was something that was really big for them. And I think that we'll hear some response quickly, hopefully, and in terms of BlackBerry's hopes there. An entire government is a big deal, and this is one of the first big announcements that I think could be some bad news for them altogether.
Has BlackBerry announced any plans to fix the weaknesses in its OS to make it more secure?
Thus far, no. The company hasn't offered a clear date on when it will fix the weaknesses. Again, it wasn't something that they were very, very specific on exactly what part of it failed or what that fix might be. It could be an exploit that was noticed or some type of vulnerability. So it's something that we're going to keep tuned to and see when they close this gap on this and how this works out.
The Z10 goes on sale in the U.S. this Friday. How have Z10 sales in other markets been thus far, and how do you anticipate it'll do in the U.S. after this news?
Well, there's been a big mix of news on how the Z10 is doing. It's taking off in some areas and not so much in others, and it really hits the market very soon here. And what we're seeing is that it remains to be seen whether consumers will buy this new revived lineup of BlackBerries. At least here and on a worldwide basis. There's been some talks about a 1 million unit shipment that hit the news, within the last week or so. My guess would be that was some type of corporation or a corporate customer, or it definitely seems like at least it's coming from a wireless carrier. So, that's a big order and a lot of good news, a lot to hang your hat on, but it still has to sell to the consumer, and it still has to find its way into the corporate environment. And this is, a mix of news that is going to definitely affect that.
We previously reported on BlackBerry offering cash incentives to app developers to create applications for their BB10 OS. Now, in a similar determined effort to grow their app store, Microsoft is offering up cash for developers to create apps for its Windows 8 and Windows Phone platforms. So, John, what kind of incentive are we talking here?
Well, this incentive is pretty straightforward. This was a straight $100 per app that Microsoft is throwing out there. And they're trying to get behind some newly published applications that get submitted to the Windows Phone Store or the Windows Store by June 30th. And the developer has the option to make up to 20 of these apps. So for a total of $2,000, new original apps and so on. This is the program that they have out there.
What are some of the terms and conditions of Microsoft's proposed cash offering?
Well, it's actually a Visa card that they're offering, but what they're trying to do is assure some quality. So it has to comply with the usual certification requirements. The applications cannot be something that just launches a web page, so it has to have some actual functionality, and it definitely can't be a cloned version of apps that have already been published. Those things are banned from the promotion, and then also it's only open to the first 10,000 entries.
We know Microsoft has a lot of catching up to do in the app market. Currently, just how far behind are they in terms of app numbers compared to their competitors, iOS and Android?
It's pretty significant. As of this morning, the count in the Windows Store, if you will, was 48,416. Which is a big number, and it's increased fivefold since they first came out with this. But not all those apps may be significant. We could point and shoot at some of these things, but when you compare that to the Apple's App Store, at last count they had 775,000 apps and growing. And Google claimed back in September that they have matched those numbers of apps. So it's definitely a lot smaller than those app stores, those other markets. And I think that it remains to be seen. Do those numbers actually equal quality? These big numbers. Soon someone will be claiming 2 million, 3 million. So a lot of people give some credence to those. The size of the app store, and I think that's kind of a good indicator, but not the best indicator of what's going on in those things. So I think that Microsoft's trying to pay attention to some of these things.
So prior to his departure from Microsoft back in November, Steven Sinofsky, who previously ran the Windows division, had opposed paying developers for apps. Why do you think Sinofsky thought paying developers for apps was a bad idea? And what are your opinions on this type of tactic?
Yeah, I think that the word is that he thought it would be a sign that things weren't going well if Microsoft were to do this. But, when you think about it, I think that when you look at this and the size of the cash prize, if you will, the programming of apps is actually not something that's easy or very casual. It's somewhat hard. And I think that the goal of this program, at least, as I read through it, was to generate interest and get some people who are unfamiliar with developing and get them into doing this, and it provides some incentive in that. And I think the reason why I build that in is because I think that if you think about developers and those good developers that are out there creating good apps and things like that, few of them would be interested in $100. It's a lot of man hours, a lot of investment and time and testing and so on. The end result, if that were the case, if they were interested in doing something like this, would be a lot of sloppy apps and something that wasn't quite a quality product. And I think this is not really for that market. This is for people who are just coming to the market, coming to programming. Microsoft has a lot of tools in that that try to make that gap and make that easier. And this is some incentive to bring people to that world.
Well, John, thanks for your time this morning. Great to see you.
Thank you.
And coming up this morning on SiliconANGLE TV, is Amazon finally making plans for its own music service? And several Microsoft employees' Xbox Live accounts have fallen victim to hackers. We found out more information about these latest targets just on the other side.